We have 35 to 40 of the 50 best research universities in the world. We have 60 of the top 100. So based on hard data, we're clearly in first place by a long way. But there is a gathering storm coming, particularly around our public universities. If we don't do something to refurbish those, we could lose that lead.
Why do you say storm?
We see other universities outside the U.S. copying our model. They think it's a very good model, countries like China. And so we're going to find more serious competition. We have dominated this race since the 1930s. 60% of the Nobel prizes have come from scholars at U.S. universities. So that to me, that's a dominating lead. We could lose that.
Are universities spending their money in the wrong places?
In some cases they are, because if you're a university and you're competing for research from many different national agencies, what you find is they all have a different set of requirements of how you must report. So it's a lot of bureaucracy to respond to that. We could have one system to make that work a lot simpler. And universities could share more across university lines too.
Is it possible to quantify the contribution that innovation and research and development at American universities makes to the growth of the economy over time?
It's clear to see that the movement that we see in almost every area of technology, particularly information technology, tremendous amount of work there. So we think it's really, really important. One of the things we found in our study, though, is that we've got to make sure that we commercialize more of that here. And we believe the relationship that companies have with universities really needs to shift from a buyer-seller kind of relationship today to a true partner.
You know, as a former CEO, as the chairman of one of America's biggest banks, that there's nothing like the profit motive to get companies moving. Do you feel perhaps as though you need to educate your fellow business leaders on the value of partnering with universities to try and get them to create the incentives?
Absolutely. You don't need to educate DuPont or IBM, but mid-sized companies that don't realize that those inventions are enabling their suppliers to make a difference or enabling their customers to make a difference, that's what's more difficult. And so they're not doing as much partnering with universities, and that's what our committees propose we do something about.
Tell me what happens if we don't do this, if we don't follow the recommendations of your committee. What are the consequences?
It's exactly the same question we ask at DuPont. If we quit long-term research, what's going to happen? We know we're going to fall behind. We know we're going to be out of business at a point in time. The world is very different today because it's this innovation in technology that is moving the world. And if we do not have a good stake in every major technology moving forward, our country's going to be left behind. And there are people that would like to take us out of the game.
Who's going to eat our lunch? China,
Singapore, Korea. Seoul National University has some of the very best questions. So there's some really strong coming on. So if the one thing about this study that concerns us, because we have 35 to 40 of the best ones today, the top 50, people say, well, we're doing so great, what's the problem? Because how quickly we could fall behind. And we're particularly worried about the public universities with a lack of funding.